I could end up marrying a hooker and gambling my house away before the trips even started.
Another. Hello, I'm Nipper Reed.
And I'm Phil Wolf.
So, settle down, have a nice cup of tea, and enjoy the Venomous Exchange Radio podcast.
Crumpets, Nipper. I want the crumpets.
Well, as you've been such an extraordinarily good boy.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is Venom Exchange Radio in the year 2023. This is episode 12. My name is Phil Wolf, and as always, I am joined by the illustrious Mr. Nipper Reed.
Hello, Phil. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I feel like it's been so long.
It feels like forever. It's just been a bit of a mad time at the minute, but
it has.
It's good to be back. Good to be back.
It's good to hear and see you. Well, I get to see you. Other people don't. I'm privileged.
No, bless your heart. Bless your heart. I've just come back from holiday.
You did. The herping holiday. I
had my first foreign herp trip of the year, which was extremely successful, I've got to say. I went through, I'm trying to, as well as doing all the US rattlesnakes and finishing off the European list for everything, I want to also do all the Canary Islands endemics because I'm fascinated by the biology of the Canary Islands. It's such a unique habitat, and I think there's 7 main islands, and they've all got endemics, even though they're only like 2 miles apart from one another and things like that. It's incredible. It's a real little evolutionary hotspot. It's really, really cool place. And as I say, very few places have the sort of geology and biology of the Canary Islands. It's all black volcanic rock and endemic cacti and succulents. It's a really, really cool place to herp.
That's awesome.
So ticking off the list, I thought we'd do Gran Canaria this time, which is lovely because it meant the missus could come along and sunbathe and do stuff, a nice bit of winter sun, because it's about 90k off the coast of Africa, so it's 24 it's 365 days a year sort of sunshine, which is nice.
That's awesome.
And I managed to get the 3 endemics out there very, very quickly, which was the Gran Canaria skink, which is one of the most beautiful lizards I've seen.
That's the one with the blue back?
Blue tail, iridescent, completely iridescent. Not massive, probably 6 inches in total length, but yeah, just a stunning thing. To see, I've got a little sort of perv on blue animals anyway.
You feel like we all do.
Insularis, Azareus, all of those I've kept or want to keep. But this was stunning. And then you've got an endemic gecko out there, and which is a tarantula, and you've got an endemic. The Galatea lizards, and they sort of fill the ecological niche of, I would imagine, trying to think what you've got in America that's that big.
Like fence lizards? No,
bigger. Chuckwallers, probably. Something that sort of size.
Well, that's right. It's in Timon, right? Is it Timon?
No. These are sort of fill the same equivalent niche. In Europe, their biggest lizards are Timon, the Timon nevadensis and Timon lepidus. And this is a similar size, if not a little bit bigger even, and sort of fills the same sort of niche. So a sort of quite an opportunistic herbivore and insect feeder as well. So
you were telling me about being able to watch the dynamic between the different size niche of lizard and like the larger ones allowing the little ones. And
it was a real blessing to just sort of sit and have time to sit, because you know what it's like on a lot of our herp trips. It's right, we need to see this species, right, we've seen it, tick, right, let's drive to the next spot because we want this species, tick. But because I was on holiday and there's only 3 species on the island, it was nice to just chill. So I watched for hours, and you've got sort of like volcanic cliff faces, which are like a real rusty red, very sort of Australia, Arizona looking cliff faces. And at the bottom of the cliff faces is obviously scree and rubble boulder piles. And yeah, there was a real sort of dynamic where the big, I'm presuming males, maybe sexist, but I'm presuming the bigger lizards would dominate on the rock face, and they all had a sort of habitat of about 10 meters by 10 meters, which they would patrol and chase off anything that entered in there. And the smaller lizards, the sort of juveniles and the sub-adults, a slightly different color. They're not so red, more mottled, and they were in the rock piles. So they were very, very cryptic for the rock piles.
Wow.
As soon as they went up into the red sort of cliff faces, their camouflage wasn't so great. But there's a real dynamic in terms of size as to where they were. And the skinks, again, were only in the rock piles, but only in the damper areas of the rock piles. And never the twain shall meet. Nobody bothered anybody else. It was absolutely fascinating to watch.
That's
really,
awesome.
really cool. Yeah, it was cool.
That's super cool.
And now I've got ages to my next foreign herc trip, which is in May. And that'll be
ages.
That'll be Utah.
Yeah,
Although I am going out to Vegas. I'm flying into Vegas first. So what could go wrong? I could end up marrying a hooker and gambling my house away before the trips even started.
That's all right. As long as you find rattlesnakes, that's all that matters.
As long as I see some Buzztails, I don't care.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
is good. All is good. Yeah, no, it's been good.
Oh man, awesome.
Yeah. Apart from
I wish I had exciting stories to talk about gallivanting globally, but I don't. So, but we're here. What's that?
I was going to say, you have got other nice things to talk about because
I do. I recently acquired some baby Buzztails from our good friend Kyle, the Clob King. I recently got a pair of, they're probably 8 or 9 month old, definitely 2022 offspring lepidus from the Davis Mountains locality, which is super cool because I've been there and I've seen it, and that just makes it so much more special.
100%.
So I got them and I've set them up, and recently got some black box cages. For those of you who are unaware, Black Box is a phenomenal enclosure manufacturer. PVC, sliders, open top, screen top, you name it, they make it. Fantastic, shameless plug. Blackboxcages.com, check it out. But I got some 2x18 by 2s that are going to be specifically for montane rattlesnakes. And then Kyle's cool enough, he's going to send me landscape shots of the localities of Buzztails that I'm keeping.
Nice.
So that I can make the backdrops and do the fake rocks and all that. So I'm super excited about that. And so I'm going to basically try and do what you and Eric are doing and focus on better enclosures and better husbandry, and not so much gathering every single croat that I can get. So, but I feel like that's a really good segue to introduce our guest this episode. So our guest this episode is Mr. Saunders Drukker, and Saunders is a globe-trotting, buzztail snapping aficionado of montane deliciousness. So without further ado, what's up, Saunders?
Howdy. Yes. Aficionado. It sounds so weird to hear. Sometimes I just think of myself as, a weird little trash dirt desert goblin who's just out playing around in the desert.
Which sounds like an amazing way to spend your life.
It does.
It's really different. I was living a different life before I started these kinds of projects and these kinds of endeavors. And I think I prefer this side of it,
100%. 100%.
Rock and roll, man.
Can you explain, it sounds amazing. How have you channeled your life so that you just grub around and look for rattlesnakes, which is what I will do when I win the lottery?
So I've always been into herping, specifically into rattlesnakes. I grew up in Central Texas, so West Texas was just right out there, which is desert Southwest. The U.S. is just full of rattlesnakes, so they were always on my mind. I went to college. I got a degree in biology, or I got a degree in ecology, and then I went off to grad school. And I was originally going to be doing some stuff with Houston toads.
Oh, wow.
Some monitoring on some little endangered toads here in Central Texas. They're pretty neat, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. And so my first summer in grad school after I started my PhD, I went out to the Biology of the Pit Vipers conference and spent some time out there. And I literally, I was like, okay, this is my favorite thing in the world. This is what I want to like do my project on. This is what I want to dedicate myself. And while I was out there, I got some ideas, and I spent the whole drive home on like these, back rural New Mexico highways and stuff. I'll apologize, writing down ideas on the notes app on my phone for all these different projects.
Yeah, man.
And I don't even know if I listened to music on that drive.
That conference is at the Chiricahua Desert Museum, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
Nipper and I just went there this past June, and I can only fathom what it must be like to be there for the Pit Viper Symposium.
It was incredible. I mean, there were so many just world-class scientists there. It really got my brain working. And so that whole drive home, I formulated this project to follow up on some past research, working on montane rattlesnakes. And as soon as I got back, I walked into my boss's office with like a proposal and a literature review. And I was like, I want to work on montane rattlesnakes. And he went for it. And ever since, I've been spending basically my whole summers and into the fall just wandering around southern New Mexico and Arizona.
It's called living the dream. Living the dream.
Trying to find as many rattlesnakes as possible.
God, I hate you so much.
A lot of people do, it seems.
Well, it's the weirdest thing is your job is what I work for so that I can go and do. It's what a great lifestyle.
It's fantastic. I won't say that it hasn't come with a few downsides. Sometimes it's kind of hard to maintain a normal life when you disappear into the middle of nowhere with no cell phone service for months at a time every single year. But I am doing what I absolutely love. I'm working with my favorite organisms on Earth in my favorite place on Earth, and I'm gonna try and do it for as long as I can.
That's outstanding. What an achievement. That's fabulous. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Fabulous. So I've seen from your Instagram and your Facebook and that, it's not just America that you herp in though, is it? You've herped quite farther afield. Is that part of what you're doing now, or was that pre your PhD stuff?
That was kind of pre-PhD stuff. I haven't been out of the US since like 2019 or so, other than just like jumping across the border in Mexico to go get like tacos or something. But that's a different story. But I used to travel a whole bunch, and I really miss it. And part of the reason I haven't been traveling as much recently is I started my project in 2020. COVID went down. There were 2 years where I couldn't travel. And then I've just kind of been dedicating almost any free time that I've had to, going out into Southwest New Mexico, Southeastern Arizona, just really focusing on that place. But whenever I'm done with this project and get a little bit more free time back, oh my goodness, I'm going to go all over, anywhere I can find weird vipers, not just vipers, any sorts of herps that I can. Vietnam has been high on my list for a really long time. So has Ecuador. So has like Namibia. There's a lot of stuff in Europe I want to do, all those weird little European adders and vipers and stuff.
That's what I'd like to hear. Proper herping in Europe.
I want to. People talk all the time about like, oh, once I have free time, I'm going to backpack across Europe and eat all the food and see all the art and the architecture and stuff. I'm like, I'm going to, backpack across Europe and yes, eat all the good food, but just like go from viper locality to viper locality if I can, and just see what I can find.
You don't have to backpack. I've got a very comfortable Land Rover. We can just drive It'll be fun.
No, don't say that. I'll take you up on it.
No, that's great. I'm always Viper trips are my favourite thing, and Europe has got some stunning Vipers. You know, particularly Spain at the minute. I'm on a real, as everyone knows, because I go on about it all the time. I'm on a real Spanish or Iberian, Portugal, Spain, Gibraltar trip at the minute. You know, Vipera Latast, which has just been what's the word? It's just been split into 4 subspecies now. Stunning. You've got Sewane's Viper, which pattern-wise is just phenomenal. You've got all the different asp vipers. Then you've got some of the montane stuff as you get further out into sort of Turkey or Macedonia and Turkey. Like, just insane. And then you've got all the sort of the Russian-y sort of Krasnikovi and Olovi and all of that sort of stuff. Just all stunning and very, very, you know, from an ecological standpoint, really, really similar to the sort of montane stuff that you're studying. You know, same ecological niche, you know, same problems of, you know, very, very short period above ground because of the harshness of the weather and all that sort of stuff. Just fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. You need to get out here. 100%.
Yeah, I really do. I'll be super excited to spend a good amount of time in like an ecosystem or working with a taxa that I basically know nothing about. You know, I've read about Vipera and all that stuff in books, but yeah, I've never found them in the wild. And just like that gap in my knowledge is really interesting to me. I want to fill that in. I want to go see what it's like over there. And, you know, the same goes true for, you know, the montane viper radiation in like, you know, the Andes and stuff on like the, you know, west coast of Ecuador, in Peru, or the like the western slope of the Andes.
What species is that? Oviophis and things like that.
That's a bunch of stuff that's all recently been lumped into Bothrops.
Right.
But it used to include the genuses or the genera like Bothriopsis, Bothrocophaius, just weird little stuff like what is it? Bothrops taeniata, Bothrops medusa, Chloramelis. I think there's like an Anderson eye down there. Bothrocophaius campbelli. Just all of this crazy diversity that again I've never seen, and I love mountains and I love small vipers, and so that place is on my list. Southeast Asia is on my list. South Africa is on my list. All of those cool things. I don't know. I just want to go hit all of the hot spots of tiny viper diversity.
I was listening to the Herpetoculture podcast, and they were reviewing a paper on the new Gloidius, which is the highest altitude snake now.
Gloidius, like Himalayensis or something like that.
Something like that. It's named after wherever, which is really cool. It's actually named after where it was found rather than after some rock band or somebody's sister, which annoys the fuck out of me.
Same.
Or some actor that contributes a lot of money to conservation.
Yeah. But no, it's fascinating that how high up, you know, in terms of altitude and in terms of above snow lines and stuff like that, that a viper can exist is incredible.
And I think too that species is like an obligate insectivore that like only eats these weird high elevation moths or something like that. Just bizarre, weird ecologies like that. I love that.
Yeah. But it's venomous. It has no need to be venomous whatsoever. It's absolutely fascinating. But yeah, I 100%. I mean, I've been to that part of the world, but yeah, I'd love to go back and do some specific viper research. That'd be very cool.
Yeah.
So I know you spent some time in Guatemala, and I saw some of your, like Arfer pics and stuff like that. Is that as far south as you've gone in that, group of animals?
I went to Peru many years ago, like with my family. I think I might have been in high school or maybe early college. But that was like a family trip. I herped while I was there, but I had to go along with my family. No shame to my family, but I would have preferred to have spent the entire trip grubbing around in the rainforest or something, catch as many snakes as possible. But I had to, hang out with the family. But as far as like a really serious herping trip, Guatemala is the furthest south that I've been in that area.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's cool to see Guatemala, man, because a lot of people don't venture to certain countries because they think there's some kind of stigma, or they are weary for whatever reason, or for a multitude of reasons, depending on the country. But it's so close to us, and I feel like nobody herps it, and the fauna is fantastic.
I think what I've found about those sorts of areas, or those countries that everybody gets like scared of, Guatemala, Mexico, some stuff in Southeast Asia, like, Laos and Cambodia, is that there are spots in those countries that you should, especially as, a Westerner gringo, you should absolutely not go to those places. But
right.
If you are, intelligent and, you have some local connections, people who know where to go, like there's absolutely no problems with being down there. In Guatemala, we had to like bribe a cop, and, we had some weird stuff getting across the border from Guatemala into Belize. But, that was the general sort of like annoyances or hazards that you run into whenever you're doing these weird trips in foreign countries. And I think that's just part of the experience. If you know what you're doing and you have connections down there, then a lot of those countries are, just as safe as traveling around a lot of different places in America. I mean, heck, there's spots in America that I try to avoid that I probably wouldn't go to.
Yeah. There's spots in my county that I don't go to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's all relative.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question though? And if I'm not allowed to ask it, I won't. But can we talk about the United Church of Crab?
So yeah, we can absolutely talk about the United Church of Crab. So I bought this crab flag from like a beachfront shack thing on the Texas coast a few years ago.
Nice.
Just as a joke with my brother-in-law.
This is great.
And then when we went to Guatemala, I had completely, unintentionally left it crumpled up in my bag. And like when we got down there and I was organizing my backpack, I found it, and it just became this running joke. And so like every cool thing that we found, we like took pictures holding the crab flag with it. We also found a bunch of freshwater crabs at this one spot in Guatemala. And so it just became this like running joke. And since then I've taken that, actually not that original crab flag. Unfortunately, the original crab flag got stolen with my backpack when my car got broken into, but I got a replacement.
That's good.
And like that crab flag has been dragged all over the place with me. I bring it out with me every time I go into New Mexico, and basically everyone that I herp with and camp with has now signed the crab flag.
That's it, man. That's awesome.
Joined the Church of Crab.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
It's just funny. And, crabs are fucking cool.
They are.
I love crabs. There's incredible diversity there. I wish more people were into them. And we're going to keep the Church of the Crab flag going. Excuse me, dog. Thanks, buddy.
That's awesome. I love it. Hopefully one day Nipper and I get to
I want to sign that flag.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Earn our signature on that flag. That's cool, man.
Without a doubt. There's some like you don't have to do much to earn a place on the crab flag. I've had just like random birders that pass through that like stop to look at my hummingbird feeders, sign it and stuff. But that's, part of the, part of the ruse is that I'm secretly indoctrinating as many people as I can into this weird crab themed cult.
That's it. I'm in it.
I like it.
I'm literally going to do everything in my power to support this cult.
Thank you very much. We
yes,
we do take donations. Cash only, though.
That's fine.
for tax
In
purposes.
unmarked envelopes with no return address. Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh man. So so we know how you got onto the whole PhD Montaigne Rattler thing.
Mhm.
Do you want to go into, like, first of all, how far along are you? How much more do you think you have left? And then, I mean, within reason, obviously science is ever evolving, but are you at liberty to kind of go into some of the projects and like what some of the goals are?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a whole bunch of stuff I can talk about. So I've done 3 summers of data collection for the project so far. I have one more left is the plan this summer, and I won't be out there as much this summer as I've been the past couple summers. But I'll go out for a stint in May to June, and then a little bit of August and September as well, just when the weather is good. But I'm hopefully in the process of kind of wrapping up the PhD. My current aim is to graduate fall of 2024, spring 2025, if I can't make that deadline, which is determined by, all sorts of stuff, data processing, working with my committee. Like it's an ever evolving thing. Who knows? Maybe it'll take even longer. But I've been working on it for 3 years. I'm starting to get some data and some results back. And yeah, I'm not ready to be done with the project or the lifestyle. I am ready to be done with grad school. Grad school is, I guess you got to get through it to get that PhD, but it's, a lot of stress constantly. And I know I often like portray my life as like, adventuring around the desert, doing all this crazy stuff constantly. But I spend the other, 8 months of my year sitting in front of a computer, analyzing data and writing papers. It's not nearly as fun as the winters are not nearly as fun as the summers. Let's put it that way.
I can imagine.
Mm.
So what exactly is the project? I know you have to do with temperatures and then if do you mind going into like some of the locality stuff and then obviously the species that you're focusing on?
Mm-hmm. So I am studying the effects of wildfire and climate change on the natural history and populations of rattlesnakes. I'm working in Southeast Arizona and Southwest New Mexico, basically on every species I can find. So I'm working on banded rock rattlesnakes, Crotalus lepidus clobberi, northern blacktail rattlesnakes, Crotalus molossus. I have 2 tiger rattlesnakes for my project. I probably won't determine any trends for them, but I took data on them. Western diamondbacks as well, Crotalus atrox, and then ridge-nosed rattlesnakes, Crotalus willardi obscurus. And there's been a bunch of research done, particularly on clobberi, molossus, and willardi. They're like a really good kind of trio for studying effects in montane ecosystems. A lot of work done by like Matt Good, Andy Holycross, Dave Preval, although he mostly worked on twin spots. And I am following up on some of the trends that they found, as well as implementing new methods to look at the effects of fire and climate change on how rattlesnakes are doing in that area. I so far have worked a little bit in the Chiricahua Mountains, Peloncillo Mountains, and I've got some data from the Animas Mountains, but I'm not, I don't get to go there by myself, unfortunately.
Very cool. Now, is it a vast difference in what you're noticing from lowland areas or lower elevation into these higher alpine and subalpine ecosystems? And is it, how do I phrase this? Is there specific types of fires and normal annual burns and whatnot that are specific to Sky Islands and higher elevation climate and subalpine climate? Or is it just kind of like this is happening and it happens to go up the mountain?
So we are seeing overall a general trend of aridification in the Southwest. Southwestern New Mexico, southeastern Arizona are heavily reliant on these summer monsoon systems. If you've ever herped that area, you know that you're waiting for the rains. Usually in August, these big monsoon rains come. They, at least in some mountain ranges, are kind of like clockwork, like 1 p.m., 3 p.m. hits, and it just starts pouring like crazy. But what we've seen from climate data is that the consistency of the monsoons is kind of breaking down. This summer, we had a fantastic monsoon season. It was rainy as hell. I was stuck out in the mountains for like a week and a half, couldn't get out because all the roads were flooded. But like the previous 2 years that I've been working, monsoon had been super small, not that effective. And that's kind of a trend that we're seeing, is generally aridification. This aridification also manifests itself in more intense and habitat changing fires. So wildfire is a natural part of almost every single terrestrial ecosystem on Earth. Besides like Antarctica, nothing's burning down there. But everywhere that has vegetation to burn has some sort of fire regime. And in the Southwest, there is a healthy fire regime, but whenever European people colonized the continent, they suppressed fires, they introduced a bunch of cattle, changed the ecosystem. And so now what we are getting is, instead of like these regular healthy fires that move through the ecosystem, we get periods of fire suppression followed by these massive, super hot, like stand replacing fires. I work in the Palencios for most of my project. And this year, May 27th, massive fire, like 7,000 acres or something, burned through there. And all of these areas that used to be like a forested hillside, these big stands of Chihuahuan pines, all of that has burned. Those trees are dead. And those areas that were forested are now being converted to like sort of rocky, shrubby, kind of grassy hills. And after the fires, there's a bunch of rain that washed a bunch of soil off of there. So basically, areas of forest are being converted to areas of grass and shrubland. And we are seeing a mixed bag of effects on the species that inhabit those areas. Like Crotalus atrox, it loves shrubby, grassy little hills like that. So they seem to be moving up in elevation into these areas where they were frequently less common. Black-tailed rattlesnakes, they're super generalist. They, will occupy just about any kind of habitat, but, super intensely burned areas, they're not as much a fan of. I found that the banded rock rattlesnakes, provided that they can survive the fire, that they can get into the refugia, they don't really mind if it's like forested or rocky. They occupy a wide variety of these habitats as long as there's rocks for them to go and hide in. But they are kind of taking a hit from the change in the consistency of the monsoon. Without any good rain, they're breeding less often, their body condition is a little bit less. And then stuff like, the super endangered New Mexico ridge-nosed rattlesnake, Crotalus willardi obscurus, it is heavily reliant on like these densely forested hillsides and canyon bottoms. And when you get a big fire that moves through and changes all of that to like rocky, scrubby, grassy hills, they are just getting obliterated by it. If they don't die in the fire itself, then they, have less suitable habitat. And we're basically seeing a conversion of the Palencia Mountains from a more kind of mix of high elevation grassland and forested canyons, forested hillsides to, one of those mountain ranges that is, rocky and scrubby, and it still has snakes, but it's losing the habitat specialist.
Yeah, it's not the same.
And the same trend has been shown for the Animus Mountains, which is much bigger and it will hold out for longer. But even there's these big stand replacing fires, and they have documented declines in populations of Obscurus from the breakdown of the monsoon and change in habitat.
So, is it fair to say that it is the habitat that segregates the different species of rattlesnake rather than the altitude?
I would say both.
Both.
With the altitude, for one, you get changes in habitat. Altitude determines what kind of plants are growing where. It also determines like the temperature envelope. And there's massive overlap with a lot of them. But habitat, elevation, and through elevation, temperature regime is probably the big determinant of what lives where.
And you mentioned that the snakes that survive aren't in great condition. Presumably the fires have a much greater effect on the smaller sort of lizards and stuff like that. How are they bouncing back, for want of a better word, or are they being decimated as well?
At least from the fire this summer that I saw, immediately post fire, there was like nothing alive in the burn scar, basically. Other than insects, there was like a crazy boom in like wood boring beetles immediately following the fire because there's all this new dead wood. But I went like 3 or 4 weeks post fire before I saw any lizards of any kind in the burn scar. And then I started to see, as some plants started to come back, I was seeing like whiptails and stuff. But there was definitely a period where, you could tell that there was not as much life in that area. And a lot of it for the snakes, even if they survive the main fire, there's no more tree cover. Soil has washed out because of the, blackening of the soil from all the soot. It's a lot hotter in the burn area. And for like a tiny little rattlesnake species, like a banded rock rattlesnake or a willardi, they desiccate super easily. They need refugia that they can go into and, keep themselves a little bit humid. And if you lose that, then they start getting super stressed. And if that stress doesn't kill them this year, maybe it prevents them from breeding that year. And so next year you don't have any babies to replace, animals that might die in winter or be predated upon. And it's just like all of these little stressors accumulating over time. And we can see that in the body condition of snakes. The body condition of banded rock rattlesnakes and the Palencios has declined significantly and pretty steadily for the past, oh my goodness, almost 30 years now. Data set I have goes back to like 95.
Wow. Wow.
And it's subtle, but it's happening.
Yeah. If you're noticing, if you're weighing animals and they all weigh around the same weight, and next year they're all a little less, and the year after that they're all a little less, and the year after that, you know what I mean? It the evidence is there. Yeah. So,
and I don't quite have the data for this, but my suspicion is that like banded rock rattlesnakes, clobberai, they occupy some crazy arid, super rocky, nasty little mountain ranges. And so I think that eventually they will probably kind of bounce back in that area and end up being all right, maybe a little bit change in their ecology. But at the moment we're seeing, at least with the Palencios, the conversion of it from a more forested sky island like the Chiricahuas or something into one of these smaller, hotter, more arid mountain ranges. And the snakes are taking some time to adjust to that, it seems.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
they'll bounce back.
Yeah, in terms of a percentage of the mountain, for want of a better word, when these fires occur, what is the burn ratio of how much of the mountain is actually destroyed by the fire?
So, at least with the southern Palencios, which is what I feel most qualified to talk on, and the Palencios are like a 300-mile long mountain range. I don't work at all in the northern stuff, but the southern portion, I don't know, maybe like 15% of it, maybe like 10% of it burned in the fire this year. But there was another fire in 2019, the Miller fire, that burned probably 10% as well. And back in 2011, there was the Maverick fire, which burnt 10%. And with each of these, we've seen decline in forest coverage of the mountain range. And yeah, it's just kind of bit by bit, it seems.
And obviously, you're working actively on this, and I'll preface with no one's denying climate change at all. But I will ask, how many? How do I phrase this? Is there an annual natural or even human influenced burn that is consistent with things? Like, for example, I live right next to the Everglades, and there are certain areas of Everglades where it burns every single year. Sometimes it gets really crazy out of control because of our highway systems that we put in, and you know, the planet getting hotter and what have you. But other times it's just a little tiny dinker fire because it's normal, and like nobody even tries to put it out because it's completely natural. How much of that annual burn is there supposed to be, or should, for lack of a better word?
So I guess I should preface this. I am not anti-fire at all. I used to work in Florida doing prescribed burns at a research station called Tall Timbers. I've got a background in fire.
Awesome.
I really enjoy it. And fire absolutely needs to be used as like a management tool on these landscapes. There is a healthy fire regime that we need to return to.
Sure.
But I think it kind of comes down to like time of year and intensity of the burn. The past couple fires that have been the Palencios have been in like May and June and July when it's crazy hot. All the vegetation is dry and dead. And so the fire itself is super intense, probably hotter than it should be. There's, I think, probably a little bit more intelligent fire management that could be done, you know, burning at times of year when the fire intensity would be much less. It would kill less trees. And that's what I would like to see. The problem with at least these super remote areas is that they kind of just respond to fires whenever they happen. There's a lot of human caused fires out in this region. And when one of those sparks up, their general plan, I mean, because it's a very uninhabited area, is they just kind of let it burn out. They watch it, but they let them happen. And I don't want to say necessarily that I disagree with that, but I don't know. Maybe we need to start burning in, you know, the fall or something when there's more green vegetation and the fire intensity is less, so we can get good regenerative burns rather than these habitat changing, stand replacing fires that we have been getting. Fire is not bad. It's just the wrong kind of fire, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I think to kind of expand my question a little bit, is there like you'd mentioned, say Mountain A gets every year it burns 5%, and Mountain B every year burns 5%, but every year since you started looking, now it's 7% and 8%. Now we're at 10%. How much difference does that play a role in the landscape itself? I mean, I don't know if that's, I'm trying to figure out how to formulate this. Through your observations over the past several years doing your research, is there more damage being done because of human issues, whether it be climate change or campers or people like me flicking a cigarette out the window, opposed to the natural lightning strikes and rock slides and whatever else?
It does kind of seem to be that case. I can say that there is a definite change in the overall habitat happening in these mountain ranges. When I was out there this summer, immediately post fire, I ran into some other researchers who had been doing like forest monitoring, specifically like tree kill monitoring from fires in that region. And they showed me their project was like they had these specific photo sites where they took like the same exact photo over years. And they're showing me like photos from 15, 20 years ago when this hillside was just covered in large mature pine trees. And then, over time, there've just been so many burns. And like now that hillside was, a little bit of manzanita and oak scrub with some grass between it. And
so
I know
even, I'm sorry, go ahead.
There are some people who would say like, oh, well, it's converting back to what it's supposed to be, but I don't know if I quite agree with it. Whether it's specifically human caused or not, or human intended, we are seeing a change in habitat in those mountain ranges, away from more denser, mature forests.
Now, in your observations of some of these areas that have been converted from subalpine, coniferous stuff to grassland, steppeland stuff, is it that the steppeland ecosystem grows in before the coniferous stuff has time to?
Yes.
Like if there wasn't cattle grass growing, covering up the sun from these little pine cones that want to grow, but they're little pine cones, they don't have the time or the light to do it. And then all of a sudden cattle grass comes in. It's like, well, there goes the pine cones.
Yeah. It's also a little bit less of like the grass moving in, but more like the methods of seed dispersal. So at least post fire this year, it burned like crazy and then it rained like crazy, and literal tons of soil were being washed off of these mountainsides. It was all over the road and stuff. It was filling up the creeks. Like the amount of erosion post fire was incredible. And whenever that soil goes down, it takes with it the seed bank of those conifers, like those pines, those junipers, and then even like the oaks, the seeds that have been sitting in the soil waiting to spring up post fire, or new seeds that were dropped by pines before they burnt. All that seems to be just like getting washed away down into the canyon bottoms and then out into the plains and stuff. But then you have, wind dispersed grass seeds that blow in from everywhere and colonize. And that's what's left.
Yeah.
And then grasslands themselves are also like more prone to low intensity, more frequent fires. And so then they burn again and it kills like whatever small sapling had started to come up again. And it forms like a positive feedback loop.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to stop. And I'm not an expert. I don't exactly know how to do it. I'm just out there trying to document the changes.
Sure. And again, I wasn't trying to say one thing or another. I was just curious as to your observations of, what do you think is really happening, and how much of it is supposed to be like that, and how much of it is us messing it up,
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's very tough. Yeah. I think when we were in Arizona recently, there are these beautiful fields, millions of acres of grassland. And I think it was Dustin Grahn telling us that whatever field we were driving through, none of that grass is native. And they have all the lightning spotters out in the fields on their big trucks with like stands in the back of them, because that grass is not native, they have to have firefighters watching for lightning so they can immediately put it out, because like you were saying, it's so much faster burning. So it makes sense, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So when you're out surveying, what sort of numbers of snakes are you actually seeing on a daily basis? Is it you're seeing 1 or 2 specimens, or have you got areas where there are a lot?
It definitely depends on time of year. I mean, I have gone, like, my first summer, I went a full month without encountering a snake.
On my days,
and
I would have just given up and gone home.
Wow.
Granted, that was like, between like June 25th and July 25th. So like the hottest, driest time of year. I shouldn't have been out there. It's not good for snakes. But then, like, once the monsoon season rolls in and activity starts picking up, I don't know, you can kind of guarantee 1 or 2 snakes a day. Usually it might just be like a blacktail or something, which are super common out there. But if you know the kind of habitat that you're looking for, or you've started to learn some of the activity patterns, you can get a blacktail a day. Banded rock rattlesnakes, clobber eye, they seem to have like these really definite activity patterns. And I've also found that it seems like different hillsides, even hillsides that are like 200 meters apart, like one will turn on for like 3 days, and I'll find like 4 or 5 snakes up there, and I'll be checking both of them, and like I found 5 snakes here, but like this hillside that's just a little bit over, nothing. And then it'll like switch, and then all of a sudden they'll be here and not on the other one. I don't know exactly why those weird little activity flutters happen. Maybe it's like a feedback loop, like they, one gets active and then the others smell its chemical, like pheromones and stuff, and they decide to come up. But if you start to kind of learn those trends, like, I don't know, you can find one basically every single day if the conditions are good. If conditions are bad, then hang out at camp and read a book or something.
Can I be so bold as to ask, are you specifically looking for animals that are naturally uncovered, or are you flipping like a true herper and going digging?
I'm doing everything.
Okay, because I was going to say is I didn't know if you flipping a rock and finding a clob underneath, if that is truly, how do I phrase this? If that would be an adequate data for your work because you unearthed it, you know what I mean? And I didn't know if your work, you had to see it on the move, or you had to see it basking, or you had to see it hunting. You know what I mean?
Well, so I can include both of them in my study, but they get classified as different, So I'll list like one is like, oh, this was an active snake out in these conditions, versus this was a snake that, was in refugia that I uncovered. Okay. And so both are useful, but you get different data from each,
Yeah, it's better to find everything opposed to only finding half.
Yeah, if it's super hot and dry out, and I find like, oh, I'm finding snakes under logs or under rocks and stuff, versus, oh, it's been rainy and it's a little bit cooler and I'm finding them out on the move. Like that is data. That's extra data.
Yeah.
Most of my snakes I find, I don't think I have randomly flipped a snake in the Palencios in a very long time. Well, actually, so that's not true. 2 years ago, I was out there and I walked up to this really nice rock pile that I had my eyes on, but it had never produced a snake. I had 2 friends with me. And as we're walking up to the rock pile, I was like, okay. And I don't know why I thought I was bold enough to call it. But I said, okay, there is a snake in this rock pile. We just have to find it. We walk up, look over this rock, and there's this big, beautiful male clobber eye sitting right up on top of a rock, coiled up. And, it was awesome. We were all psyched. And he was sitting on top of like this big, nice flat rock. And so, we caught him. I had him under a hat before we were going to do our processing stuff and take photos. And I said to the people with me, I'm like, all right, watch, there's probably a female underneath this rock. And I lifted the rock, and sure enough, there was a big, beautiful female that I assume he had been breeding with, who was coiled up like in the exact same spot, but just underneath the same rock. That's the only snake that I've randomly flipped, but I guess it also wasn't, random. There was a snake that I found just above it.
That's awesome though. Is that, I think I've seen your shot of that clob with like on top of the rock with the mountainscape in the background.
That wasn't that one. That might've been a different one. I don't know. I found so many of them out there, but just, yeah, most of my encounters like that are visual encounters. And that is my absolute favorite way to find any kind of snake, especially rattlesnakes. If I can find a rattlesnake that's like coiled against a rock in ambush position or something, to see them in situ, especially before they buzz me. So that was actually before I ever started my project. That was that was the first clob I ever found in the Palencias.
Actually, I'm sorry, this is the photo I was thinking of, that one.
Oh, that's in a whole different mountain range. That wasn't even for my project. That was just herping. That was just having fun.
Awesome.
That snake buzzed at me from a rock pile, like so many of them. A lot of it is you just kind of walk around with a big stick and like tap rocks and stuff. And which is so nice. It's so considerate of them to tell me where they are.
Exactly.
Honestly, the USA is easy herping because none of our snakes make any noise, and you have to flip everything.
So I got to ask, are you at liberty to say how many Obscurus you've actually seen?
I've seen one. I've seen one, and it took me 5 years.
Wow. It's one more than Nipper and I.
Yeah, it's that snake, and the words, I guess, kind of gotten out now. So I was really secretive about it for a long time. I guess I can talk about it a little bit more. That snake is like, I don't classify it the same as like any other animal that I've tried really hard to find. Growing up, I grew up in Texas. I really wanted to find an indigo snake. And, I went out cruising a whole bunch for them and hiking. And for years, I had thought that I had put effort into finding an indigo snake. I thought I had tried hard. And then I went and I tried to find an Obscurus in the US. And Jesus Christ. I mean,
that's awesome.
It's funny because I'll talk to other herpers about it, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, like this brings me so much hope. Like I'm so psyched for it." And it's like, no, I have spent literal months straight alone out there, hiking every single day through crazy backcountry, like hitting every single pocket of habitat that I can find, waking up in the morning, hiking all day, going to bed, wake up the next day, hike all day, go to bed, and doing that like literally, I mean,
for years,
every single summer, months away from home, months away from my family and friends, in a place with no cell phone service, living in the mountains, doing just that. And I've seen one, and it was just, I don't want to say a fluke or random, but like,
no, it was right place, right time.
Yeah. If I'd chosen a different canyon that morning, I wouldn't have found it. I never would have found it. And I've gone back to that spot and like been really quiet and been like, okay, is it still hanging out there? And no, I've never seen it again.
That's what really spins me out sometimes about herping. It really is right place, right time.
Yeah.
And you can put in, I mean, I don't even want to talk about blotch snakes because it's just depressing me. But, you'll get a birder that has absolutely no interest in reptiles whatsoever. We'll be looking at some shitty little brown wren or something like that, and one will crawl right past them and they'll get amazing photographs. And can someone ID this snake for me? And yet you'll get people like yourselves that's put in so many hours to find a particular species, and you just can't find it. It's soul destroying. But how good did it feel when you saw it?
I screamed, I cried.
That's it, man.
Funnily enough, like I took my photos, I took my data from it, and I think I only spent like 15 minutes with the animal itself. I had the permits to hold on to it for 24 hours to take it back to camp and stuff, but I was just so they're so sensitive, and I wanted to make sure that it did not leave that canyon, that I did not disturb it enough. I want it to be there. I want to be able to find it again in the future. So like, yeah, I could have held on to it for 24 hours and I spent 15 minutes with it, took my data, took some photos and released it as soon as I could. And like, whenever people, you know, again, they're like, oh, that looks like so hopeful. My final tallies for it, 607 miles hiked to find it, which is pretty close to the actual distance from if I had just walked out my front door right now to where I had found it. I think like the straight line measurement from my house to where I found it is something like 658 miles or something like that.
Jesus.
So it's basically, you know, if I'd walked from here to there. And then 157 days of searching. That's not 157 like days spent out there. That is the active time that I spent awake looking for that species of snake.
Awesome.
And you did it.
And you got it.
You got it.
I did. It was my entire life is paired into before and after.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
And it's really nice because like now I can think about other things again.
I completely get it. As I say, blotch snake. Now I've got 4 because they've just split another bloody lizard. I've got 4 species left in Europe, and I know blotch snake will be the last species. And just trying to find it, you know, I see so many pictures of people that are not interested in snakes post. Oh, I've just found this in my garden or whatever. I cannot find it. It's a really hard snake. So I completely get what you're saying. Yeah.
And I mean, if I just wanted to see one, I could have hopped across the border to Mexico and gone to places where you can find like 15 of them in a day or something.
Yeah.
But it's just.
No, I could go to Turkey and tick it off quite easily, but it's not in Europe. You know what I mean? Yeah. But as I said, without keep going on about it, it's like when we found the Sonoran coral snake. You can't go out and look for that. It was just really lucky. You know, it's monsoon. It came out. We was in the right place at the right time. But oh, mate,
I've still not seen a Sonoran coral. I've seen a DOR, but I've tried a whole bunch to try and get one. It's the same thing. I just haven't been in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah, incredible.
Now, have you found Willardi and Prize Eye?
Oh yeah.
So can you say with confidence that Obscurus in the United States is probably the hardest species?
Oh, without a doubt.
Like, I mean, of all herps, like that you've gone looking for.
Of all herps that I have gone looking for, it is absolutely like the hardest one to find. There are other species out there that are probably more rare, but there's like a weird kind of Venn diagram of like rareness to ability to find. Like you take something that's like hyper specific, like what is it? The West Virginia cave salamander. Little Gyronophilus. It only lives in like a single cave, and so it's super rare. But if you go to that cave, you're almost guaranteed to find one.
Well, it's like me and eastern coral snakes. So I've never found an eastern coral snake in the wild ever. Birders find it. People pull them out of their pool that's like a mile down the street from my house. I've never found one, but I stopped looking because it's like the Sonoran. It's like you have to be right place, right time. I'm gonna stop looking, and as soon as I stop looking, one will happen to slither across the sidewalk when I'm walking my dog.
Yeah.
Obviously not the case with the Obscurus.
And I had thought and gotten so inside of my head for a long time that it was just me and that it wasn't actually that hard, but I was just bad at it. Like I would never be able to, spot a will or die. And so, and this summer I went over to the Huachucos and I was like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm like capable of seeing one of these things. And, went to like places where they're known from, and was like, oh, here they are. Like I found it. It's the same exact thing. I do know what kind of habitat I'm looking for. I do know how to spot them. I have the search image. But at least in the Palencios, they are just crazy rare. Over in the Animus, I guess that they're a little bit more common, but it's completely private and, inaccessible to everybody. But even there, they've been documenting declines, and it is apparently less easy to find them than it used to be. But a Palencio obscurus, I think that there's only something like 34 official ones recorded for the entire time that people have been working and hanging out in that mountain range. And a lot of people go there. A lot of herpers go there every single year. A lot of birders go through. And I talk to random birders if they've ever seen this weird snake, and I think that they are just as rare as everybody is afraid that they are. It's hard to find one. You can go put yourself in habitat every single day for years, and maybe you'll get one, maybe you won't.
Yeah, I always find it interesting when, there's a lot of animal species, there's a lot of plant species that are protected, and usually they're protected for a specific reason, and there's so many that are not, and it's simply because no one took the time to really do a survey, or the law's really old and nobody feels like changing it because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then you get a species like that, and you can totally see why it's protected. That's just it.
Yeah. And I mean, it would not surprise me at all if nobody ever found a Palencio obscurus again. Like if it just never happened. I don't think that that's the case. I think other people probably will. But if it just never happens, like I would not be surprised at all. We are going to see that subspecies go extinct. It'll first in the Palencios, then the Animus, and then probably in the Sierra San Luis. As these trends increase, like, some people have said, 2050. I think that's a bit soon. Some people have said 2080. That's, I don't know. We'll see what happens between now and 2080. But a lot of those short range endemic montane species that are heavily reliant upon specific temperature regimes, specific weather patterns like monsoons. If it gets hotter and the monsoon breaks down, we're going to see a lot of stuff just get more and more rare. Heck, they've documented pretty crazy declines for Pryci, twin spots in the Chiricahuas, and changes to habitats and stuff. And you can still go up into the Chiricahuas and find a whole bunch of them. But
no, you can't.
No, you cannot.
That is what I thought. And then I stopped going to the places that everybody told me to go to. And I trusted my instinct for, habitat, and was like, oh, here they are. That's all I can say. That's so this is a little bit of sidebar. Advice for like every single herper: stop going where people tell you to.
Yeah, it's
like,
a good shout.
Just learn about the species, figure out what kind of habitat that it likes, from the literature. Use your brain. And when I tried and failed to find a Pryci for years, going to like the exact spots that people were like, oh, you go here, you can't miss one, in multiple different mountain ranges. And it was just like, I can't. And then I stopped listening to them, and I just drove until I saw some good habitat, and in 2 different mountain ranges that I've done that, like found one within 10 minutes whenever I stopped listening to people.
Lord.
God, I think I couldn't hate him any more than I do. But
I know. Just press stop and record thing.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, we're done here. We're done here. Oh man. Well, I keep telling Nipper, I'm glad we didn't find one that trip, because that's an excuse to go back.
Oh, 100%. It's still,
You know?
even in that area, that there's still so much stuff I want to see. I mean, I know we were very lucky with what we did see, but there's still a lot in that area I'd love to see.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. And it's, you know, you can't have a bad day hiking for weird little montane rattlesnakes. You can have a bad day road cruising. You can have a bad day flipping. And I've had bad days road cruising and bad days flipping, but if I'm out hiking in habitat, even if I don't find anything, like I'm having a good time, and it's worth it to be out there.
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
So talking of hiking and herping, what is on your list that you are desperate to see that you haven't found? I mean, I know you found the Holy Grail, but what else is on your list?
So, at least in the US, Cerberus. And I have failed for Cerberus like 5 or 6 times. And it's because I keep going back to the same damn spot that people have been telling me. And I haven't been to look for them in these past 2 years. I just been too busy and too obsessed with a different weird rare rattlesnake. But this summer when I go out, I'm going to go target them, and I'm going to find my own spot and stop going where people have told me. And I wager I'm going to find one. Cerbs are one. I still need to go look for like specs and basically everything in California, the whole Great Basin complex, lutosis, midget fadeds, all of those. I've spent a lot of time looking for some very specific stuff, and I've kind of ignored other things. So there's all of these other Western rattlesnakes that I need to go see and that I'm excited to see. I really want to go down into Mexico a whole bunch. You know, Mexico is a holy grail of herping, and I've been so focused that I've ignored other places. Outside of there, like, you know, getting weirder, Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Protobothrops and Ovophis. Those I just absolutely love. And I want to go try really, really hard for them, of like as many species in both of those genuses as I can find. And then basically anything down in like Latin America and the tropics. I love it down there because like even every time I go down there, I find all of like this weird little bycatch and some bizarre little colubrid that I'm like, I didn't know that existed. But it's incredible. And I just want more nights like that. I want more nights, more humid nights in the jungle, finding weird stuff that I didn't know it existed. Like that's, I love that. I love that.
Here.
100%. I mean, as you know, I'm super excited to go to Utah because, as you say, there is such a very small area with such a lot of great subspecies. It's just cannot wait. Midget faded, I'm fascinated by. I think it's such an incredible. I know you want to see lutosis and stuff like that, but midget faded is so high on my list of things to say. It's incredible.
Yeah, I gotta go see them. I mean, I want to see every single rattlesnake in the U.S. Like everybody else. So now I got to get started on a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm also like, I'm not just a snake nerd. I'm a bird nerd and a cactus nerd and an orchid nerd. And thankfully, a lot of the same places that are like really good for rattlesnakes are really good for all the other stuff that I get super fascinated by.
Oh, 100%. And my house is full of cacti from around the world, which has somehow found its way into my luggage and things. I've done all of the UK orchids. I've done quite a lot of the European orchids. I think we're all we're all the same. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I love those groups that are full of just weird biodiversity. You know, orchids, like there's 48 or 41,000 species or something. That's just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to go see a whole bunch of them. Guatemala was fantastic for that. The birds and orchids in Guatemala were mind blowing.
That's awesome.
That is incredible. Yeah. Is there anything that's really common in the United States that you haven't seen? Have you got a species that everybody's seen and you just luck out on it all the time?
I mean, I guess there's quite a few. Cerberus is one. They're not that hard to find. I mean,
they're easy. I mean, what did it take us? 10 minutes?
Yeah, and I just keep striking out.
Nipper was in the United States less than 2 hours, and he found a Cerberus.
I mean, I'm with y'all too on Sonoran coral snake and eastern coral snake. I lived in Florida for like 2 years, and I saw one eastern coral snake disappear off a sand road in my rear view mirror. And that's the only look that I'd gotten of one. I'd like to go find another one or go and try my hand at those again. Yeah, there's got to be some weird common stuff. I mean, basically, I've never herped California. So all of the common stuff over there, I've failed on. At least around here, I'm trying to think of like what I've got is like a white whale around here. There's not really much here in Central Texas. I need to go get Texas garter snakes, which are a weird little endemic subspecies. I've tried for them a few times, but it's just, I don't know, wrong conditions or something. I did something wrong. But I would say, at least at this moment and until the season starts again, I'm really excited to not have an obsessive target.
Yeah,
it's really good. I haven't been this clear-headed in years.
It makes for a completely different time out in the hills, completely different. And you'll find so much stuff because you're not focusing on one particular habitat type or something like that.
See, that's what I'm afraid of, because like there's certain species that are local to me as well as not local to me that I know in my heart when I do find it, I'll be let down that A, I found it, and B, I need to find more. And that's kind of what I'm afraid of. But again, I haven't achieved those goals, so it could very well be wrong. You know?
Yeah.
So
there's also, I would say, some of my white whales are not necessarily specific species, but specific localities. I love banded rock rattlesnakes. There's some mountain ranges that I've tried for them in several times and just had no luck. And I'd really like to finally knock those out.
Are you at liberty to say, or?
I mean, some of them are like really well-known, like populations that aren't that hard to find them in, like Pyramid Mountains or the Organs or something. Santa Rita's in Arizona.
That particular locality, the Organs, is the most common for sale in Europe for some reason.
Interesting.
I don't know why, but that's the one, that or Davis Mountains. Those are the two that you see for sale all the time.
Yeah. And then like those are not difficult mountain ranges to find them in. I guess I just been there at like the wrong times or something. There's also a couple localities of leps, mottled rock rattlesnake that I really want to see. I grew up going to West Texas every summer. I've seen a lot of Davis Mountains ones. I've seen a lot of like the sort of more eastern limestone phase, and there's some like weirder, more obscure localities that I'd really like to see them in. When I go out to West Texas these days, like I avoid all of my old go-to spots, kind of like the plague. I'm just trying to see more stuff in new places, some cool habitats, new localities, fill in the gaps in my own knowledge.
Yeah. Have you? You say you've not herped Mexico yet, or have you? A little bit.
A tiny bit, but not that much.
I just wondered if you'd seen things like Ravus and Aquilis.
No, I've never even been down in their range. Every year I say that I'm going to go out there, and then I go out to the desert and I have like all of my research stuff and biological samples in my car that I can't take to Mexico. Or I could probably take into Mexico, but then would have a bit of a tough time bringing it back. And every time that I say that I do, there's some weird thing that pops up and ruins a trip. I had trips planned for 2020 before COVID that I was like pretty set on and was going to go. And then COVID happened and the entire world.
Yeah.
Like,
you're not alone, man. Most
just
of us
exploded. So yeah, Mexico is really, really high on my list. I just got bad luck with trips getting canceled at like the last minute to go down there. Of course.
Yeah, man, that's wild. But you're still killing it. Still fighting the good fight, man. I love it.
I'm having a good time. And I get to spend a lot of my time hiking out in the middle of nowhere, looking for the coolest things on earth. So
yeah,
no complaints.
Yeah. So are you a keeper at all? Do you have anything that you keep at home?
I used to have a much larger collection. I've downsized quite a bit. I've got a couple captive bred Globberi I got from Glob King himself, Kyle.
Sweet.
I mean, he produces a whole bunch of really nice snakes. I've got some from him. I've got a pair of Saharan horned vipers, Cerastes that I love.
Excellent.
I've got some like captive bred green salamanders, Aeneas Aeneas, that were like captive bred at the Toledo Zoo or something in Ohio. That they are super cool. I love them to death. I used to have a much larger collection, and then just being gone for like the whole summers and stuff, like I realized like, there's a level of husbandry that I want to be able to give these animals, and I had too many to give that to each of them individually. So, I gave a whole bunch of stuff to, friends or people that I knew would keep them well, and just kind of downsized back to the few things that I was really interested in keeping. And I don't know, whenever I get done with grad school, maybe I'll kind of get back into it at the moment, but I haven't gotten anything new in quite a while. And I don't have any plans to at the moment. Just, I don't know. It doesn't fit the lifestyle of disappearing for months at a time.
Clobs and Cerastes, man. That's all you need.
Exactly.
They're good. And the thing I like about those little vipers is, once you have them set up in like a nice, cool bioactive setup or something like that, you can kind of leave them alone for a little while. You don't have to take them out and mess with them or clean the cage or anything, which is nice because, if you have to dip out for a month, like just get my roommate to water them every once in a while, give them a big feed before I go, and then feed them whenever I come back.
That's excellent. You say bioactive. I keep Cerastes as well. I just wondered how you're setting yours up.
Oh, my Cerastes aren't bioactive at all. I've got my Cerastes on straight sand with like naturalistic, so like little rock caves and stuff. But I know that there's some people who are like, oh, don't keep them on sand. They'll, ingest it whenever they eat something or like that. But it's like,
yeah,
it's like they
live in sand.
Sand. What are you talking about? But I can send you some pics or something when we're done here. But I've just got them on like some nice sand that I dug up from a sand hill over in East Texas, and they love it. They've been doing great for me. They are insane feeders.
They are. Do you cohabit? Are they in together or separate?
So my female was significantly smaller than the male for the past couple of years. She's now just at the age where I put them together for a couple of weeks last summer. They're separate right now because the herp room is super cold. And so I don't hibernate them as much as my other snakes, but they definitely have like a period of dryness, inactivity, a little bit of downtime. But I'll put them back together in the spring, see if I can get some little babies out of it or something like that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
that's very cool. And do you for your? You say you got clouds as well? Do you? They're bioactive, are they? Or yeah,
they're bioactive. I have a pair of captive bred Pelencio clobs that I got from Kyle, or I got one from Kyle. I got one from Justin Garza, and like I have them on dirt from the Pelencios with some nice lichen covered rock from there.
That's awesome.
They're captive bred.
So cool, man.
yeah.
I wanted like that little piece of the
100%.
mountain range that I love so much that I can just like go check out and
100%.
fall in love with.
That's as I say, seeing the habitat when we was out there, it's just I would love to recreate that back in the UK.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. How lucky to be able to go and actually collect rocks from the right area. That's mad.
I know. It's so cool. So cool.
It's super rewarding, and having a small collection. I think I have like, I don't know, 6 snakes or something at the moment. But just, being able to give each one of them the amount of attention and care that I really want to keep them well, mimic their natural environment as much as I can. That's really rewarding to me.
Yeah,
and I think that's why I
100%.
downsized, is I had a whole bunch of snakes. Some of them that I'd like gotten for free or something, or been given to me, or bought like kind of on a whim, that I was like, oh, this thing's cool. But after a while I was like, oh, I'm not, I have too many of them to keep how I want to. And so downsized to a level that I felt comfortable maintaining up to my own very high standards.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we're all doing that at the minute. I'm trying to downsize as much as possible. And exactly as you said, nicer cages and more time to field herp.
Yeah,
so that's definitely the way forward.
Yeah, it's also just like I'm a grad student. I'm leasing a house. I will eventually have to move out from here or something like that. And when you are still moving around as much as I am at this point in my life, having venomous snakes is another new hurdle.
Yeah.
Especially you're like looking at like, oh, what's the laws in this city or something, or this neighborhood, or all that weird stuff. So
yeah, man.
Maybe when I have a house, I'll expand
well.
a little bit more.
Yeah.
Someday when I buy a house, I'm going to have a whole bunch of greenhouses for cactus and orchids. Keep whatever snakes I have outdoors if I can. Just, I don't know, try and do everything right.
Awesome.
Yeah, sounds fabulous.
Well, hey, man, where can people find you on social media?
On social media, I am at Saunders Drukker. My name spelled exactly like it is here. Just it's the nice thing about having a weird, unique name is you always have a username. That's probably my most active social media. I have a YouTube channel, which if you type in Saunders Drukker into YouTube will pop up. But since I've been doing grad school and PhD, I'll admit I've kind of let that slip a little bit. But once I have more time, I would like to get back into it and film some more videos. I have a Flickr, also Saunders Drukker. Again, weird, unique name. If you Google Saunders Drukker, I think everything comes up. Yeah.
It's great, man. Well, we can't thank you enough for coming on the show, man. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And very, very, very inspirational, man.
Like, 100%.
Legit.
100%.
I mean, if you're interested in living like a dirt person for a couple months a year, I guess I'm a good role model. If the prospect of going 45 days straight without a shower doesn't interest you, then I don't know, you might want to find someone else to look up to.
Depends on if the ridge nose are out.
Oh God, yeah.
Most of the time they're not.
It's a pretty good carrot on that stick, though. I'll tell you that.
It is, and it was enough for me. So
yeah.
I assume it'll be enough for some others.
Yeah. Well, Nip, is there anything else you want to cover?
No, just huge thanks for Saunders for coming on. Really, really appreciate it. It was 100% inspirational. My dogs are going absolutely berserk in the background for some reason. I have no idea.
It's time to
It's
party.
all right. That's what they're for.
That's what they're for. No, mate, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for everybody for listening in to us. We appreciate you could listen to anything and you're listening to us. So thank you very much.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you very
Don't
much.
forget to follow me on Instagram because I'm still trying to nudge my Instagram over 1,000 followers.
Yep. At Nipper Reed. Find him.
Find me. There'll be some nice shots of Gran Canaria lizards on there over the next few days. Apart from that, good night to everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.